Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hello and welcome to your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, March 31st, 2020. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Freshly washed my hands. I am ready to do some safe and socially distanced podcasting. And Jer, thanks for the reminder on the date, as I think we all need a reminder of what day it is these days.
Oh, I mean, have you seen those things going around where they have like the kids' homework, like pictures of it, and you can print it out and like, today is Tuesday. You do a little drawing. It's great.
That's all of us right now. Anyway, we'll, of course, run down all the stories of the day. Then I talk with economist Anson Smuts for his historical perspective on the current spike in unemployment filings.
Here are today's top-line coronavirus case and fatality numbers from the state of Michigan. The state now has 7,615 confirmed cases, a jump of more than 1,100 since yesterday, and 259 deaths. That's 75 more since yesterday's report. The city of Detroit's case count continues to rise at 2,080 and 75 fatalities. Oakland's next with 70 fatalities and nearly 1,600 cases, as Southeast Michigan continues to be the center of the outbreak statewide. So, Sven, we covered the roller coaster ride on Friday between President Trump and GM over its plan to start manufacturing ventilators. Now, Ford's joining the effort to help build ventilators. You were on the news conference call yesterday. What's going on, man?
So Ford has a new plan, says they're going to build 50,000 ventilators within 100 days. They'll do this at their Rawsonville components plant that's near Ypsilanti. They're currently retooling that plant. Production is slated to begin starting the week of April 20th. That's about 3 weeks from now. And they say they're going to use more than 500 volunteer United Auto Worker employees. They'll all receive full pay and everything. And then once they get fully ramped up at Rawsonville and 3 shifts working, they say they can make as many as 30,000 ventilator units each month.
All right, so I'm curious because there's different brands and things. Whose ventilator will they be manufacturing?
So let me back up a little bit. Ford last week announced that it was partnering with GE Healthcare and 3M to build a whole variety of medical equipment. We talked about it here on the show. Ford's been helping GE Healthcare ramp up production of ventilators at GE Healthcare's facility in Madison, Wisconsin. What they're talking about building here at the Rawsonville plant is a more basic ventilator unit, and it's actually one made by a different company based out of Florida called Aeron. This is a slightly simpler ventilator unit. It does not need electricity. It works on air pressure, actually. GE Healthcare actually identified this. They purchased the licensing rights to manufacture it. It's FDA approved, and it's said to meet the needs of most of the coronavirus patients who, go into respiratory failure and need help breathing. Officials from both companies said that this was an easier version to kind of get into production more quickly. They're continuing to work together, Ford and GE Healthcare, that is, on how Ford can make a simplified version of GE's existing ventilator. So there could be more to come.
So I understand Ford will be reopening a factory that's been closed. How are they going to help protect workers from transmitting coronavirus?
Right. So Ford's been working on a plan for all of its plants, what they're going to do once they get reopened, because they're going to have to deal with this at all their plants, presumably. So they say they've got a number of safeguards planned, including they're going to pre-screen employees before they enter the building, before they let them go in the building. They're going to enforce social distancing guidelines, so 6 feet distance between workers. They're going to use like plastic shields in workstations to try to kind of enforce that separation and try to, prevent coughing or sneezes, respiration from transmitting. And then, of course, Ford, as part of this whole thing, has been mass producing plastic face shields using 3D printing technology from a facility in Plymouth as well. Meanwhile, Jerry, I'd also note that Ford announced Tuesday that it was pulling back from its rather ambitious plans to start reopening its factories in April. If you remember, Ford had said it wanted to restart production starting April 6th, that's next week, down in Mexico, and then April 14th here in the U.S., including the Dearborn truck plant. Ford still hasn't offered any new dates for restarting production, so they're kind of dialing back their expectations here. Meanwhile, Fiat Chrysler still plans to resume production in North America on April 13th. GM, meanwhile, hasn't announced any restart date for its plants. Macomb County Prosecutor Eric Smith resigned on Monday in the wake of criminal corruption charges filed against him and 3 associates by Michigan Attorney General Dan Nessel. Smith reportedly resigned to pursue a plea deal for forthcoming federal corruption charges, according to the Detroit News. Nessel last week filed 10 corruption charges against Smith, including embezzlement and conducting a criminal enterprise. If convicted of the most serious offenses, he faces up to 20 years in prison. In a statement, Smith said he needed to step aside so the prosecutor's office could continue to serve residents of Macomb County. He also said he intends to, quote, wholeheartedly defend himself against the allegations and was confident he'll be exonerated. The Attorney General's investigation alleges that Smith operated secretive bank accounts fed by county money for his own personal benefit. Investigators believe he and the others helped embezzle around $600,000. Smith, who was elected prosecutor in 2004, is free on a $100,000 personal recognizance bond. Gene Cloud, the department's chief trial lawyer, assumes the role of interim county prosecutor. Smith's term was set to expire at the end of this year.
Coronavirus testing may be about to speed up. New instant tests from Abbott Laboratories have been given emergency approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The test shortened the time from a few days to as little as 5 minutes for a positive result and 13 minutes for a negative one. And the tests in some cases can detect the virus before symptoms develop. Locally, thanks to a new contract negotiated by Mayor Mike Duggan, the instant test kits will be rolled out for first responders, healthcare workers, and bus drivers in the city of Detroit. Detroit will get 5 testing machines and 5,000 testing samples within the week. The goal is 250 tests per day. The Abbott tests work on their existing ID Now platform that many area hospitals already have. ID Now can also be used to test for strep, flu, and other ailments depending on how the system is set up. The testing machines are portable too, about the size of a toaster. Abbott says that they aim to ramp up to 50,000 tests a day nationally. Here are a couple updates about getting around town without a car. Smart, the suburban bus system, said that they're going to move to a modified everyday Sunday bus schedule with some additions for commuter routes. This is because of reduced ridership. The agency says it's down 80% system-wide since the pandemic hit. Some of the modifications include that buses on Woodward, Gratiot, and Michigan for both fast and local service will reduce service to alternate every half hour. So there'd be one fast bus and then one local bus. Commuter and park and ride routes will operate only one trip into downtown Detroit in the morning and only one trip out of downtown in the afternoon. Ridership on those is down 95%. The Smart Shuttles and Dial-A-Ride service are also not running.
Now to Pedal Power. Mogo, the nonprofit bike sharing service that serves downtown Detroit, has decided to make their bike shares free during the crisis. All you have to do is download the transit app or go through the process on their website, mogodetroit.org. Mogo says they're doing additional cleanliness precautions, cleaning stations and bikes more frequently. In other major cities, bike share usage has spiked as people are choosing it over mass transit since you're not in an enclosed space while you're riding a bike.
Michigan-based brand Carhartt is getting into making products for the crisis. The company says that all of their U.S.-based production will shift to the effort. Work will start April 6th to begin making 50,000 medical gowns. On April 20th, the company will start production on 2.5 million masks. Carhartt has a long history in our area, founded in Dearborn in 1889.
Meanwhile, Southfield-based auto supplier Lear Corporation says it has added production capacity at its plant up in Flint to make protective face masks for healthcare providers and first responders. According to MLive, Lear has already donated masks to the Detroit Medical Center and to the city of Detroit for use by police and fire department employees.
Here are a couple updates to stories you may have heard on the podcast. If you remember, we chatted with the Detroit Bus Company owner, Andy Diderossi about switching from bus tours to making hand sanitizer. Well, when we last talked to him, he had done 2 batches. He has now ramped up for not just a 3rd, but a 4th batch of production. Currently, there are 800 1-gallon jugs available for purchase on their website, thedetroitbus.com. And Castalia Cocktails is continuing their weekly pickup cocktail kits going forward. We spoke about those on the show last week. Check them out at castaliacocktails.com. The next batch is scheduled for April 4th. Sven, we're going to have to get the team some to get us through.
No doubt, man. I was just doing some shopping for beers before we started recording. Our next guest is Anson Smuts. He's director and senior economist at O'Keefe, which is a business consultancy in Bloomfield Hills. He's been doing some interesting research into the unemployment benefits filing. Anson, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thanks for having me, Sven.
So obviously, big news. The Department of Labor reported that almost 3.3 million Americans filed claims for unemployment benefits. That's the highest number of unemployment claims in U.S. history. Give us a sense of just how big this is and the kind of historical significance of it.
Well, these numbers really right now show us the scale of the economic crisis that we find ourselves in and that we're heading into. And the historical context is, most recently, the national claims last week were 280,000. And that's up to 3.3 million. So about a 3 million increase.
That's
and
big.
As you said, that's the highest ever. That's higher than the previous record was only 695,000 in 1982. And it's far higher than what we saw in the previous recession, where, the claims were roughly 500,000 to 600,000 during the peak of job losses, which were occurring in 2009. And then, here in Michigan, the claims surged from about 5,000 to 130,000. So, and again, that's a number that we've never seen before, highest ever. And all of this really just illustrates how quickly this crisis has occurred. We're seeing kind of months of economic damage that we would see in a normal recession packed into just a week or two.
The number that you cited for Michigan, how does that compare to how bad it was here a decade ago during the Great Recession?
I believe during the previous recession, it was hovering somewhere in the 20 to 30,000 range. So again, this is really just economic damage being condensed into a very short period because of what we saw, businesses shutting down and the economy kind of grinding to a halt.
What do you expect the trend to be here? Do you think filing numbers for unemployment benefit claims will increase, or do you think they're going to hold steady from here?
It's hard to say whether they will increase. I believe that for the next week or two, we will see really high numbers. Again, first of all, because there are further restrictions on economic activity, to stem the virus. In Michigan, for example, we saw Governor Whitmer order all non-essential businesses to close. We're seeing similar things happen across the country. The other reason why numbers will go up definitely, or numbers will be high this week, is because the state systems which handle these claims, which are supposed to be filing these claims, just couldn't handle the volume that was coming in last week. So some of that's going to flow into this week as well.
So Congress has passed and the president has signed a massive $2 trillion stimulus package. What does it do in terms of unemployment benefits?
First of all, I think the stimulus is a good indicator to show, again, how severe this economic crisis is going to be. They're not going to pass a record size bill, $2 trillion, if they didn't think we were heading into some very serious issues. As far as unemployment benefits go, it adds about $600 to the weekly benefits already provided by the states. And that's for the first 4 months. So on average, across the country, people get $300 to $400 on average through these benefits. So that's going to increase on average to about $1,000 for the first 4 months. The bill also extends the period of eligibility to receive these benefits. So even after 4 months, most people would receive benefits, although at the lower state level, the regular level, but for another kind of 4 to 6 months, depending on what state you're in. And then in addition to all of that, it also expands eligibility in terms of part-time workers and gig workers, people like Airbnb hosts and Uber drivers are now also able to receive some of those benefits.
This package also includes stimulus checks, $1,200 for adults, $500 for children, for people who make $75,000 a year, or $150,000 for married couples. How will this help the economy?
The government sees a dire need to get money in people's pockets and get the economy going again, because considering we're grinding to a halt, they want people to feel good about going out and spending money, which is a tall task, because right now people are quite scared. Overall, I think the stimulus in general, it's definitely going to help get money into the hands of people that need it the most, but it's unlikely to help us avoid a recession. Much like health officials talk about flattening the curve of the spread of the virus, economists are talking about kind of just flattening the curve of the recession. So kind of lessening the dip that the economy takes as a result of all of this. And I think that's what the stimulus package will do. It will kind of flatten that recession curve, but we're still probably heading for a recession.
Unemployment figures come out monthly, and they're set to come out early in April for March numbers. But I know you have written that they won't fully reflect the full scale of the damage so far, right?
That's correct. As you said, the numbers are released the first Friday of every month, Jobs Friday. And the numbers for February were about 3.5%, which is kind of in line with the record low. But the numbers are based on a national survey that's taken of about 60,000 households. And that survey is conducted in the week that includes the 12th of the month. So kind of as a result of everything happening so quickly, we know that that week in March, things had yet to really kick in. So we might see a small increase in the March figures, but we're really going to have to wait till the April figures are released at the beginning of May to get a really good picture of how the unemployment situation has changed.
Any silver linings that you see in any of this data that you're combing through at all? I mean, can you leave us on any kind of uplifting note?
I think the big question marks right now really are, they're not economic questions. They're really surrounding when the virus will be contained, or at least start to recede. When economists are looking for causes for optimism, I think people are talking about the fact that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the economy, the way that there was something fundamentally wrong in 2008, when the housing sector and the banking sector were just broken. And that really, just again truly brought the economy into a recession. But in this case, this is really something caused by, an outlier event. And the hope is that once that's over, people will start, getting back to their regular lives. When that happens, I'm not sure. And, the big question is also when consumers will feel secure in spending money, because right now they're going from, you try to get them from a state of mind where they're afraid to lose their job and they're stockpiling groceries, to kind of how do they get to a state of mind of buying a new car or going on vacation? That's a big question mark, I would say. But yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, indeed. Anson Smuts is director and senior economist at O'Keefe in Bloomfield Hills. Anson, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Eastern Market Brewing Company continues to be on a tear, most recently announcing the acquisition of coffee roaster and shop Ash Supply. Ash Supply, like EMBC, is closed during the crisis, but on Facebook, EMBC posted that they would work to reopen it stronger than ever.
Ash Supply launched its flagship coffee shop in the Madison building in Detroit in 2016. More recently, it operated a pop-up coffee bar inside the Ferndale project. That's Eastern Market Brewing's new spin-off tap room in the former home of Axel Brewing on Livernois Avenue in Ferndale. Co-founder AJ Nichols has also been designing Eastern Market's beer labels. This is the latest in a line of new business ventures ranging from ferment dog treats that use spent beer grains and Indo-Caribbean roti-style burritos to a carry-out and delivery app called Wing It that Eastern Market Brewing has launched to try to stay afloat during the shutdown.
I gotta say this, Sven. I saw that you were working on the story. I went to Wing It, and I saw giant cinnamon rolls, and all of a sudden I was jealous I'm not in your delivery area.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I was doing some online browsing for a beer order, and that's exactly where I was browsing, looking at their Raspberry Gosa 4-packs and their Elephant Juice IPA and all that stuff. I'm getting ready to put myself an order together.
It's interesting to see this story of pushing through, because there are actually a bunch of restaurants that have been choosing not to stay open. They're worried about the low margins. Some of them aren't doing as much carryout business or anywhere near the carryout business that they would if they were open. And then also like the risk to workers, because it seems as if there are some people who are not paying attention to the distancing guidelines.
Eater had an interesting story. We'll link to it in the show notes, but they talked about a business called Eli Tea in Birmingham that was doing, carryout. And then they talked about how some of the customers coming in were not really practicing good habits, social distancing and whatnot. They talked about somebody who came in who was like sweating and coughing and had a mask on. And that was when they decided that, we're just going to close. This is not safe to do it. I mean, I had said earlier that I think a lot of places are going to decide, a lot of restaurants are going to decide that it's not worth the cost of keeping the lights on and the stoves on and everything like that, that they're just not making enough money from carry out and pickup sales and everything. And they're just going to decide to close down and try to ride this out some other way.
All right, before we let you go, wanted to do a little PSA, because we've seen some stories about this, and I know this is a real issue. As someone who has seen fatbergs before and seen how sewer systems can get clogged up, apparently there's an issue in some parts of town of people flushing their latex gloves down the toilet. And I think it goes without saying this is a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe we have to give people a reminder not to flush latex plastic gloves down the toilet, but here we are, Jer, 2020.
Be careful what you put down there, because this whole system, the last thing we want is a giant sewer backup in the middle of all this stuff.
And they've apparently had that problem in parts of Macomb County. So yeah, don't flush your latex gloves down the toilet. Put them in the trash.
Well, with that, we are done for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback or ideas for the show, hit us up at dailydetroit@gmail.com. It has been a crazy time, and it will continue to be. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Take care of each other, everybody. We'll get through this together.